Hello everyone, I'm Chinzia Dominuti, Marketing Coordinator here at SmartSimple. I'd like to welcome you to our August 2018 Upgrade Q&A session webinar. Also, just wanted to mention that this webinar will be recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel by early next week. And for the upgrade release notes, please check out the wiki. Before we begin, I would like to remind you about our upcoming SmartSimple events. Elevate is coming up in October. This year it will be held at the Sheraton Grand Nashville in Nashville, Tennessee, from October 17th to 19th. The early bird price of $195 ends on September 7th, so register today. Also, save the date for Block Party New York, September 6th, Block Party Nashville, October 17th, and Block Party Dublin, November 22nd. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter. Eric Lauer has been with SmartSimple for over a decade and is one of our co-founders and Director of Customer Experience. He has a strong background in implementation, customer service, support, and system administration. Eric is also head of the SmartSimple Business Support Services team. And now I'd like to pass it over to Eric to get started.
Thanks, Chinzia. Sorry, a little slow on the slides today. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's another round of upgrades that we're happy to present to you. And just as a reminder, as I say, for every one of these, we'll walk through the changes that have been applied to the system. And in particular order, we'll go from global system upgrades, which, as the slide says, these are the changes that would have happened automatically on the live date. And then we'll cover the on-demand system updates, in which, while they're there and available for you to use, you'll have to probably do some configuration to activate them. And then we'll talk a little bit about any beta features that we have. So I'm not going to follow through the slides just to read out the various updates, but I will go through them one by one on some of the key ones that we wanted to point out, and you can always get the slide deck after to see the itemized list, or as Chinzia had mentioned, check out the release notes on the website. So let me bring up the browser here. And today I'm going to start with one of the new features that we have, which is going to be on the screen here. So when I come to our login screen, let me just log in. Perfect. So when I go to my UTA, you guys will probably notice this right away if you, just from using the system. Let me just maximize the screen here a little bit, is the change of position for the list view. So in this particular case, we've moved it from the top right corner here, and we've put it to the just to the right of the buttons and left of the search bar. So that's true for any of the list views. As you can see, if I toggle between the level 1, level 2, the grants and activities, we've changed the drop down for the list views to be set over here. So you can still see the name of the list view here that's showing in the drop list. And actually, I just want to point out that, because it's kind of funny, we had some early feedback where we had the position of the list view, and we weren't necessarily showing the name in an obvious way. So we did get, and this is the importance of testing things out on the backup and why we do it for 2 weeks in advance. So we were able to take that feedback and actually apply those changes before the upgrade even took place. So it is a great way to let us know of things that you're thinking about, or some features that you've seen. And if you can get that feedback in, we really appreciate that and can take advantage of it. The biggest change here is actually it's a reduced clicking into working with list views. So you can still change your list view by clicking the list and selecting one of the views that you want. But the biggest change here is you're able to get into the configuration of the list views right from the drop-down. So you don't have to go edit the current list view and then go into the other button to then see a list of all the list views. For example, if I wanted to edit all of the system list views, I can select the gear icon from the list, and I'm taken right to the configuration page for it. Same is true if I wanted to edit one of my personal ones. So if I want to go in here, I can edit and jump right into the same list view, and here I am with my personal list views, and I'm back into the configuration screen. But before, you used to have to do at least 2 clicks to get to. Another added feature is the ability to edit a list view right from the drop-down. So while I'm looking here, I can see that there's a check mark for the active view that I'm looking at, but right next to it is a little wrench icon. If I choose that, I can then go in to edit that particular list view. So I don't have to actually be on the list view I want to edit. I can just edit one right from the drop-down list. So same is true. I can go here and I can go edit, and I'm editing my own personal list view right from a list view that wasn't necessarily mine. So all the same security permissions and settings still apply. So if you weren't able to create system list views or edit them, you still won't be able to do those things. We really just changed the drop-down. Okay, and one of the things I want to touch on from the list views is if I choose the another list view here, in this case a personal one that I made, we've added some additional functionality to it. In this particular case, I'm flagging any of the records that I've added to a smart card. So in the past, we've had this upgrade for a while now, but just as a reminder, you're able to tag any records within the system and make them appear here in your own sort of smart card area. So anything you want to follow, whether it's a grant, a particular referral, maybe you want to follow an organization or contact, you can display them all here. But there was no way of identifying, other than looking at the record itself, from the list which records were tagged as being a smart card. So that is now visible here from within the list. Also what we've done is added some additional features around language. So what I flagged in this particular list view is I want to see, even though my language is in English, I want to see the translated language in my list view. So I'm displaying a field, I'm using the system in English, however, in my list view, I'm displaying the translated language on my screen. So that might be handy maybe for reviewers, or maybe you have multi-language in your system and you want to see maybe an English and in this case French, side by side, or you want to kind of mix and match. So just to show you how I did that quickly, if I go in using the new feature, I'll go to Edit, and the first one for the smart card is pretty easy. You just toggle, it's just a Show Smart Card Indicator, okay, and that will just place it on the list. You don't have to add it as a column or anything. That doesn't matter. It's always going to put it in the first column to the left. As far as translation, you can choose which language that you want to see in your list view. Okay, and for the translation, that one you do have to pick a particular field. So in this case, I went to column 5. Okay, and I chose. You'll see a new option in here when you're picking your fields called translated fields. This one happens to be level 1 on the grant, and I chose my field 1, which is the field that I was using for translation. So that would have been the biggest visual change that you would have seen on upgrade day. And it's all just to do with the tidy up of the list views, some repositioning of the buttons just to kind of push them closer together rather than having a space or whatnot. So just some stylized settings there. Okay. And if you wanted to see, I'll go into the record here because I do want to show you how that translation took effect. While this wasn't part of the upgrade, there is a translation feature that you can include on a field-by-field basis where you can actually translate the content. So in this case, I typed in the word 1 in English, and I had the system translate using Google Translate the word to un in French, and that's what's stored in the database, and that's the field that I was using for my list view. So that's where that came from. Also, I guess visual changes. We've kind of upgraded the look of our smart folders. Okay, so we got new icons for the smart folder view, just to allow it modernize the icons. They were pretty old, to be quite honest, and we've kind of enhanced the style in that particular case. So while I'm here, although it's not a global change, but rather than kind of popping back and forth, in this case we've introduced a new folder option, and we're calling them configuration folders. The purpose of a configuration folder is, if I click a new button here, is to allow you to build folders that are really for storing things that are going to be used for configuration. Maybe you're going to have some HTML pages in there. Maybe you're going to have some fields for maybe with use with things to do with anything with configuration. You may want to store your templates there for word merges or things like that. So it's a way of separating the folders that you're using for data versus folders that you're using for configuration. The big change there is that when we're storing data, we're actually storing the files in a separate spot. So there's, when I'm talking about the server, so they're stored somewhere else. When we make a folder, configuration folder, we're actually storing the files in the database, the same database that all the other records are stored. So it's just, there's some improvements there maybe from a back-end perspective, from a configuration and being able to grab the data associated with those folders. So that's more of an administrative function, but while I was here showing you the new look and feel, I just thought I'd mention the configuration folders as well. So back to the global changes. If we go into another record that I had set up here, calling this one visualizations, we've made some improvements to or additions to our activity lists. So we've always had the ability to create tabs for records, activities that associate with the level 1. In this case, we're ranging things from reviews, payments, reports, emails, etc. They're all available to you here. But what we've added to it is now the ability to display this information on a chart form. Okay, so I can take all of my activities, and if I use the one that I set up earlier for scheduled date, for example, so I can see all of my activities now. Rather than an itemized list, I can toggle the chart button, and I can see in a calendar format when these things are taking place. So this is handy if you want to sort of see a timeline of when things happened, when they're about to happen, and we can see here, you know, oh, I had some reports to here, then we got some payments kicking out, and we've also had some reviews. So these are interactive. You can highlight a chunk, zoom into it, zoom back out, or I can go into the individual records, hover over them to see the details, or click on them to get into the level 2 itself. So that's a nice little add-on that we're happy about this upgrade for some visualizations. In conjunction with that, if I go back up to the grant, we've also added some other indicators in there. I don't know if you saw that as I loaded the page, but we've added some enhancements to the fields that we flagged for percentages. So if I edit my record here, I have two fields, percentage bar and percentage chart. I just put in, you know, whatever values I wanted. So this is just a normal field like any other field. Okay, maybe I'll drop that one to 70. When I save it, and if I go to view mode, I can now display those percentages instead of just 35%, 70%. I can actually display it as a graph, and we have the ability to display it as a percentage bar, you know, left to right, if I'm going to hit my total, or percentage chart where it does the nice kind of in that circle format. So while I'm on the same screen here, again, just for auditability, visualizations, we've added a new pending workflow option. So up here in the top right corner, if your record triggered any, and this would be for administrators to look at, if your record triggered any workflows that didn't happen immediately and are sort of waiting in a queue to take place, you can see that now and say, oh, you know, something happened with this record, and now in this particular case, we're to create a new activity on such and such a date. So it's a good indicator now for you to see, oh, this record does contain some pending workflows that are waiting for things to happen that didn't happen immediately, and you can see what those are just on your own here without having to go to the workflow section and try and figure out what's pending for which workflows that were affected. Also, fields within the system, you may have, you know, we didn't do this originally, but what we're doing here is we are now trimming leading and ending spaces on fields such as the single line text field. So if I had inadvertently put spaces here at the end of my grant name, the database would actually save those spaces and include them as part of the characters for that field. So now, as long as the spaces are at the end, the system will trim them. So if I save it and I go back and click in here, you'll see the cursor moves back to after the S when it's over. However, if I put a space and then a new word, it will keep those spaces between words just at the very end of the sentence or at the very beginning of the sentence. The system will now remove those spaces. Okay, and it just does that. You don't have to activate it or anything. Okay, and just to be clear about these percentage bars, there's no, while it's activated immediately, don't worry, your forms aren't all going to change overnight. In this one, you do have to toggle it. So if I edit my field, I can see that it's a text box number, and I flagged it as a % field, but I have these two new options here. So I can either have it as none, which will then just display whatever characters I put in there, in this case, 25%, for example, or I can choose what type of graphic that I want to apply for it. Okay, so those are some big visual changes that we've made for this upgrade. Now, some of you may or may not know already with this one, but we have implemented a system-wide security feature to restrict common passwords. So it doesn't affect your existing password, but when you go to change your password, if you have, we're using it, it's like your common dictionaries of common words. So words like password or welcome for your password, you'll no longer be able to use, and it'll force you to use words that are not as common as that. So in this case, it's enabled by default, okay? However, you do have the option to disable this in the global settings security page. We highly recommend that you don't, given, the way things are online these days, security should be number one concern. However, we are allowing you to disable those features in the privacy and security, in the password and activation policy section, you can disable the restriction of common passwords, okay? And again, while we're in the global settings security page, I will just talk about this here. We have enable cookie usage acceptance. So you may see that, I think I already said yes to it earlier today, guys, but let's see if by disabling and turning it off. Yeah, sorry about that. I inadvertently accepted the cookie policy. But if you go to the website with that turned on, you're going to get that message. You've probably been seeing it all over the internet already, or on your phones, especially. You go to browse to a website and it says, hey, we have a cookie policy. You need to accept cookies to use this site. That is available now to, you can present to your end users, but they have to click OK to that. So if you weren't aware, SmartSimple does use cookies in order to operate. They are session cookies, so they're only used at the time or while you're logged in. So if someone were to decline that, they wouldn't be able to use the system anyway. So what this message does is allow you to present that message to your end users so that they know there is a cookie policy in place, and there may be some session cookies involved. Okay, and if you have any questions, guys, with all of these upgrades, please reach out to us afterwards, and we can go in more detail or how that affects your system into your particular use case. So back by popular demand, we have reintroduced the previous and next navigation buttons. So in here, let me go back one. I'll open up a different site here. So they would be, we had taken them away, but people had requested that they come back. And if we go here, we have, when we have tabs like this, you'll see the back and the next button, and they will allow you to cycle through the tabs rather than having to click up and down. However, we have made an enhancement to them in that if the page, they're floating now. So if you don't have to scroll down to the bottom anymore. they will pop up to the bottom of the screen so that you'll never have to scroll to access them. And you'll see here they kind of switch around, but they won't go further than the bottom of the screen, and they'll raise up to go back and next. Okay, so that's that another major change there for visual stuff within the system. Some other features that we've added are the ability to copy workflows. Okay, this is a big one for administrators out there. We've always had the ability to copy the tasks, import them and export them, I should say, rather than copy. But now, when I go into an actual workflow, I can actually copy the entire workflow, and that includes everything. So it copies the workflow, it copies the tasks, it even includes all the connectors that were there. So for administrators creating workflows, this will save you a lot of time when basing workflows off of maybe ones that have existing or similar steps. Okay. Also, we've changed some of the key mentions that we've done is updated our file versioning feature. So I'm not too sure how many people were using that, but basically we have the ability to upload files, as everyone knows. But we also have the ability to flag the fields for versioning. And what that means is if I upload a file with the same name, it's going to automatically tag on a version number, in this case V_001, 002, etc. We've had that feature for a long time, but we just changed how we're numbering the files. We had several use cases where clients are hitting into the over 100 attached files or versions of files. So in order to ensure proper sorting, okay, we're now putting in a 3-digit number so that 1 and 100 don't get missorted in the file name. Also, in terms of features that are global, we have a new import wizard. So I can show you this one for organizations and contacts. So for those, maybe you have a contact list, you want to update or import some new organizations or users into the system. We now have that, trying to make things easier for the end users. We have an import wizard. Okay, so I can browse for a file, and I have a pre-formatted file here that I've chosen in a text format, and I'm going to upload it. And what that will do is the system will actually parse through the file and identify the various columns. In this case, it was a comma delimited file. Okay, I'll just choose for, it says, what do you want the parent company to be? So these would all be sub-organizations underneath the parent. Use case would be maybe you want to add a university and you want to import all of the various departments that you know in the university, or maybe you want to import your internal branches and you want to put all your regional offices into the system. So you can say, okay, we're going to put head office as my parent company, and then all the regional offices can appear below that. And in this case, I'm going to flag all these organizations as grant-seeking orgs. Okay, and I click next, and the system was going to try, based on the information that it sees, it's actually going to try and map the fields for you. But in this case, you may have to do some help it out. The AI is not perfect yet. But in this case, I'm going to say column 1 is the organization name, address and address 2 are the next two, and it picked up city and state, no problem. And in my particular sample site here for webinars, I had disabled the zip field. So I just wanted to do that on purpose to show you that you can have columns of data that you can ignore. You don't have, doesn't have to be a perfect file. And then when I go next, it says, it gives me one more chance to say, oh, what do you want to do? And when I go ahead and confirm and upload, it will upload these records into the system underneath the one that I chose. Okay. So this import wizard is it will work for users as well as the organizations, as well as level 1s in the UTA. Okay, based on file. So it makes it easier for simple imports rather than having to configure an autoloader, for example. Perfect. So one of the biggest ones that we've done for this upgrade here is the ability to create a personal dashboard. So this is an on-demand system upgrade. It does require you to enable a security feature. In this case, if you go to Global Settings, and then I go to Security, and then I have System Feature Permissions, okay? So as a new feature, I go to the last tab here, and if I scroll down, Enable Personal Dashboard, okay? So this will allow you to control which roles will be able to create these personal dashboards. And once you do that, you'll get a new option in your drop-down list, and you can place that anywhere. But in this case, I'm going to say My Dashboard, and I created one earlier today just to show you first of what that can look like, and then we'll construct a new one together just to show you. So this is the ability to create a dashboard on a personal level. So it's not based on role, it's just based on me as the user. And the way I did this, I'll show you, it's very easy. In this case, I'm going to say New Dashboard, okay? And I'm going to call it Dashboard 2. Okay, and we are, if I spell it correctly, and we can choose from one of 4 layouts at the moment. So we are restricting you to 6 sections, and that's on purpose. We want to be able to know the size and the amount of sections that you'll have, and by knowing that, we have more control over the style and visibility. We can kind of make it look nicer. If you need more than 6, then you can just create additional dashboards, as I'm doing here, and you can toggle between different views. So the one I had chosen previously was this one, but let's go with a maybe this kind of style here. So I'm going to choose this as the style, and then click Save. Okay, so as you can see, it toggled into my Dashboard 2, and it's just a blank screen. So we've kind of used the same technology that we're using to build our smart cards, and even the terminology here. So what I can do is give it a title. So I'll say Section 1, and it says, well, what do you want to put into the first section? Maybe I want to put a horizontal bar chart. Okay, so anyone who's done configuration on portals before will see that this is a very familiar concept that we're using with the same as the portal builder when you're building sections and charts and graphs, using the same approach there so that it's consistent throughout the system. In this case here, maybe I'm going to make my X application type. So I can say type. And then here I'm going to do maybe status, and we'll count. So we'll say number records, and I'll click Save. So once it does that, you can see right behind the window here, it went ahead and created the chart pretty quickly for me here based on a list view that I had previously created. So the key thing is to build a number of list views that you can pull information from, and then use those list views to build your dashboards, whether they're lists or charts or graphs of that nature. So if I go to my second section, I can just say Section 2. Hopefully you guys will be more creative in your naming conventions. I can just choose a normal list view here, and I'll say users, and I'll choose the default one, and then it gives me a list view of the users, right? So we just created a chart. Now I have a user list in the one section, and I'll just do one more for you just to replicate what we did in the dashboard and to show you how easy it is. I'll say Section 3, and this time we're going to do aggregation, and I want to do a new one. So I'm going to call this users, okay? And I'm going to do this, choose my list view, and it says, how do you want to aggregate it? Let's do a count by, I guess, email, how many different emails there are, and we'll leave it as a whole number. I'm going to click Save. Oop. Count. Okay. And then maybe I want to add, so there it says 4 users, but maybe I want to add another one, and I'll call this one organizations, and I'll choose companies, and again, I'll just choose a default list view, and maybe I want to base it on the different cities, and I will again do a count, and I'll do maybe an abbreviation, and I'll keep it to a whole number again. Okay, and if I click Save, now I'm going to get a count of all the organizations based on the different cities, and I have 15,000. So here we are creating a personal dashboard that's unique to me. And in this case, I can do anything ranging from charts, lists, and aggregated shortcuts. I can have as many dashboards as I want and toggle between the two. Okay, and I can also add these to smart cards, with which I can then combine with the two different areas of the system, so I can get back to my dashboard from a smart card. Okay, so that's one of the biggest on-demand changes that we've done here. We've made some changes to the GDPR compliance with which to handle personal data erasure. That's a bit more involved, and it's a little bit too much. That can drive a webinar all by itself. But if GDPR does affect you, and what we've done is enhance the way we handle the data retention, and we have a process in place, and we can help you work that out for your organization with which or how to handle requests for data erasure. The use case would be, I have registered in your system as maybe an applicant or reviewer. I no longer want you to have my data according to GDPR rules in the EU, and I have now made a request to you to say, hey, I want you to erase any or all personally identifiable information related to me in the system. If that type of occurrence happens in your organization, then please contact us and we can go do a deeper dive on how you can take advantage of that in your system. A few other minor things to note. We last upgrade, we allowed you to schedule report exports. That was just using the default file export. We've now done that with custom export reports, and we've added some new options in the XML tables where you can just make it easier for administrators to add or remove columns or show or hide columns based on data that's contained in those XMLs. Okay, and we've done a couple of new integrations, but I'm going to save them for the end, and I'll just talk about a couple of minor updates first, dealing with the submit buttons, because I think it's fairly important, and then I can go in a deeper dive into the integration piece, but that I think you guys will be happy about. But if I go here to my grant and I change my status to submitted, for example, okay, so now you'll see I have this button down at the bottom called for submit for review. So we've always had the submit buttons, but we've improved how we handle the confirmation of those buttons and how we handle the end result or the confirmation page after submitting. So now when I click this button, it's giving me this, we've standardized the pop-up, so we're not using the browser's alert anymore. We used to use the browser alert and used to still have the same functionality, but it didn't look as nice. So in order to present, we use this same approach that you see all the other messages in SmartSimple. So when I click yes, in this particular case, I've also configured a confirmation page. Now, again, we've always had this functionality, but it's the way we used to do it was could be a little bit cumbersome unless you a little bit time consuming. We've now made these standard features within the system, so really all you have to do is type the text you want, and the system will handle the results. And we have the ability to put a button here, for example, so now that I've kind of come to a full stop in terms of a business process. So we allow you now to redirect the user through the use of a button, for example, where I can now click continue, and guess what? I had it redirect me back to my personal dashboard. Okay, and just quickly, I'll just show you where to find those. It's pretty easy. Again, for administrators, if you're configuring submit buttons, it's just going to make your life a little bit easier. When you go into the submit button and edit, you'll see two new sections, and they're toggles, right? So either I want to enable a confirmation alert message, and then all you do is type what you want the message to say here, and the same is true for that splash page at the end. If you want to have a splash page, you can toggle it. You can give it a title, give it the body context, and then down here you can label what the button you want, and if you want to redirect them to somewhere else, you have that ability as well. So instead of kind of configuring that through script or HTML, we've taken that away, and you can just kind of type and pick what sections that you want. All right. The other stuff is pretty administrative. Again, you can read through the various updates on the wiki. But a couple of things I do want to point out is the ability to integrate with Zoom. So we now support the Zoom API. So you'll notice we're actually using Zoom today for our webinar. What we can do within within SmartSimple now is actually create Zoom meetings through the system. So if I go through here, I have this set up on another site. Well, we can flag level 2 activities. Okay, so this is a level 2. In this case, it happens, we call it a video site review. But I'm able to create Zoom meetings. So you'll have a new button down at the bottom. You can start the Zoom conference. I won't click it because I am logged into this Zoom. I don't want to kick myself out and all of you guys. However, we can provide all the different Zoom details. Oops, I think I disabled maybe because I'm already in the Zoom. But it will basically allow you to launch a Zoom session. So just like you attended today, but you can create a Zoom meeting from SmartSimple and use SmartSimple fields in terms of participants, right? So that's just a standard field here. Or you can use the staff field, send out notifications, build notification templates. When you can send meeting agendas just like this. I just took the one from Zoom and copied that. But you can send out your meeting invites through SmartSimple using workflows and trigger a Zoom conference event. And the nice thing is it sets some certain things on by default, such as the record. And based on the status of the level 2 in SmartSimple, it will stop the meeting and it'll then send it back, and you can record things like the duration and time. The use case that this came out of was actually from the volunteer world. We had a number of, noticed a pattern where some of our clients were doing volunteer work that was not on site. So it wasn't just helping out with the, Habitat for Humanity or for that 5K run. They were actually providing professional services as the volunteer time. So maybe a bank manager was helping a nonprofit with their financial statements. And by incorporating this, now you can perform that volunteer work directly from your office, go in remotely, start a conference, spend your hour or two. The system will log that back and track it as hours recorded against your time. We also see it for many other purposes, but that was the one that kind of triggered that change. And finally, it wasn't mentioned in our webinar presentation. Kind of did that. I'm kind of sneaking this one in for you guys, just to give you a heads up. Cynthia's looking at me funny, but just giving you a heads up for some new features that we have here. So I'll show you the end result first, but what we're able to do now, think of it as a reverse. Now as I'm going to say it out loud, it's going to sound stupid, but a reverse export, which is really an import. But we've always had the ability to export Excel spreadsheets, make word merges and things of that nature. But we had, over the years we've been seeing, well, people are doing a lot with Excel, and Excel is a wonderful tool and does a lot of wonderful things. Sometimes you want that data and you just want it in the system as searchable or viewing it on the screen. So what we did here is the ability to take a spreadsheet, upload it to SmartSimple, and the system will automatically create an inline grid for you, pulling information from that file. Or you can populate discrete fields like this. So just to show you how that happened, if I go ahead and create a new grant, and I'm going to set it to my foundation one. This is the one I configured for this beta feature. And just to be very clear, this is beta. Although it does exist in the system at the moment, we're still sort of finalizing some details like how it's going to be styled and hopefully get some more feedback. So in this case, I have a sample profit and loss spreadsheet. I'm going to upload it here to my single file upload field. And when I save draft, it parsed through that Excel spreadsheet and it took a particular cell out, which happened to be the 5-year average total. So we can take discrete cells from the Excel spreadsheet to populate fields. And this is now a field in SmartSimple. It has all the same properties. I can search it. I can present it in reports or use it in a chart. It doesn't matter. And the same is true here. To look at it visually, you can populate this inline grid. Okay. So it works very similar to a Word merge field, just in reverse. So we upload a file and we read the data in rather than pushing it out. So again, I just wanted to show you guys that one as something probably will happen in the November release, but we've kind of done some beta work on it. And while we didn't really release it as an official beta, I just wanted to mention it on today, see if I'll get some feedback there. So I know I've been talking here for a while. Maybe I'll stop for a moment. And here I'm just skipping through the PowerPoint, guys. I covered everything here. Feel free to check out the wiki, or for more information, look at the slide again. And don't forget that there are some other administrative functions also part of this upgrade that are really specific to administrators that we want to cover on this webinar. And at this point, I will stop and answer any questions anyone has.
Okay, so one question that we got was, can the activity chart feature with timeline be added to multiple grants, or is it only one at a time?
Great question. At the moment, it's one at a time. It's just looking at the activities on an individual grant. So I can go into the one grant and I'll see all the payments or all the reports reviews, but just for that one grant in that timeline feature. Visualize, however, that's a nice idea. Visualizations have been a big push for us recently, so that might be a good enhancement request to maybe add that type of a graph or chart maybe to a dashboard or something where you can combine on like that timeline scale, maybe from across various grants rather than just one by one.
Okay, great. And then another question is, can you use Import Wizard to update contacts in addition to adding a new one?
Good question, and that was much debated. No, for this one is just importing. So again, if you want to update existing records, that's what would be an autoloader would be the use case for that. And actually one of the administrative notes, just to point out, is the ability now to use an autoloader to map to the object IDs. So, which wasn't possible before. So what we can do is you can create a report, let's say create a report that lists all of the organizations in your database, including the company ID, like the database ID. You can now use the autoloader to map that back and actually use it to update records or do a data cleanup. However, that's in the autoloader. This import wizard is really for just getting brand new data into the system quickly and easily.
Great. And we have two more. So
Sure.
If one person creates a personal dashboard, can it then be shared with other users?
It can. So it can be shared through the use of the smart cards. So when I click the smart card option, here I'll just show you. When I go to my dashboard, I can do it this way. So I can go to my dashboard, I can tag it to a smart card here. Okay, so I'm going to add it to a new card. I've added to my dashboard smart card. And now that smart card can be shared with others. So if I go here, like, so for example, this is my smart cards. Because I mapped my dashboard to it, when I click it, it's going to actually take me to my dashboard. However, if I now want to say, hey, that's a pretty cool dashboard, I'd like to share it with others so that we don't have to, have 10 people recreate the same one. I can now click on the share link and say, I want to share it with everybody in the staff role, or maybe I want to share it just with Steve, right? And then I can send it to him, and then he'll be able to access my dashboard through the smart card links.
Great. And do we have time for one more?
Oh, of course, yeah.
So another one here is for the restriction of common passwords.
Yes.
If this is enabled, does it prevent us from sending a simple password to a temporary introductory password? For example, we often use welcome one as a temporary password. It does.
So that applies throughout the board. Yeah, so it restricts the passwords, even the ones that you send. So it is, again, it is complying with some of the best practices from a security standpoint as well as password. While it is very convenient to be able to send somebody the welcome one password, again, it's best practice to not do that. And again, you got to weigh up your options. You can disable that, like I showed you in the global settings, but I would suggest that it's something you keep on, and you'll see it more and more now, even in other online applications, that they are enforcing strong passwords across the board.
Great. So yes, I have another one.
Okay.
So if we try to set a password as welcome for existing user, would it show up as a pop-up to say we aren't allowed to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it will. So if I go to here, so it will warn you. Let's go to my friend Steven here, and let me go to. So guys, it's really, we're all creatures of habit. The set passwords and send passwords at the bottom now, but I still go to roles and permissions. But if I go into here and I try and say welcome and welcome. Oh, did I disable it? I can't remember in global settings, but it will warn you. Sorry, it will warn you if you try to set a password that's not compliant. So in that case, you're better off to just choose the send password, and then that will go out to the user. Yeah, I think I may have disabled it. Yeah.
Great. So we did also get another question.
Sure.
So file versioning, is it based off the same name? Example, same name files or versions?
It's based on the name. So including the extension. So it's actually where's my sample here? I go to this one, so you'll see it in my this one here. So my original file upload was import.txt, and then it versioned it 1 and 2. If I go ahead now and try to upload it again, when it refreshes here, you'll see it'll tag on a version 003 to it.
Okay, that's all the questions that I see at the moment.
Perfect. And I guess we got a few more reminders.
Yeah, just before we go, I just want to remind everyone to mark your calendars for our upcoming events. So we have Block Party New York, September 6th, Block Party Nashville, October 17th, Elevate, which will be happening October 17th to 19th, and Block Party Dublin, November 22nd.
Perfect.
And thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us today for our August 2018 Upgrade Q&A webinar. We hope you found this material useful, and we'd love to hear your feedback on today's webinar. I encourage you to fill out the client survey, which will be sent to you after this presentation. If any questions pop up along the way, Eric is always here to help. And yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Have a good one.